What do you see when you think about libraries? Books? Words on a page? What if I show you 1,000 words in one image? Hi, I'm Melissa Young, Senior Processing Technician at the Library of Congress, and we're here at the world's largest treasure chest, or as I love to call it, the coolest job in the world to find out. Lucky for us, I pulled a few strings with some friends and colleagues in the music division, and they have some rare and exciting images from the collections to show us today. I'll put my mask on and we'll head inside to check it out. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, it's great to see you.
Good to see you too. This looks really old. It doesn't really look like music. What is it?
So this is actually a 12th century gradual which contained the chants for the Catholic Mass. This red decoration that we see here is actually a letter A, and it starts the text for the first chant for Advent. Now, these decorative initials were frequently used as a way of signaling the start of an important feast day. The squiggles are actually the music notation, and they're notated on a set of parallel lines known as the staff, which is the same as today's notation. Now, Guido of Arezzo created the staff, and it made it possible to write down exact pitches.
Guido sounds very important. Is he known for anything else?
Yes, and we can see his influence actually in this next 15th century book. This is a so-called Guidonian hand, which Guido created to help teach sight singing. So Guido assigned a syllable to each pitch: ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la. Now this probably reminds you of the song from The Sound of Music: do, a deer, a female deer; re, a drop of golden sun; mi, a name I call myself, and so on. Now here we see that he assigned a syllable to each one of these knuckles and also a pitch. And so when the singer was singing a melody, he would point to that on his hand, and it would help him remember that melodic line.
Are there any other illustrations in this manuscript?
Yes, so there are. Let me turn the page so that you can see it. It's fascinating. So this is actually a diagram of the universe. So during the Middle Ages, the universe was conceived as a set of concentric circles. Now we also see in today's 3D models of the universe that it is a set of concentric circles. But here in this diagram, the Earth is in the center. Now as we expand upward, the next two circles are labeled with the elements air and fire, while the following ones are the moon and the 7 known planets. And surrounding it, we see a list of the signs of the zodiac.
I'm curious, why would a diagram of the universe be included in a manuscript?
So that's a very good question. Immediately following this, we find a text that explains how to calculate the date of Easter, which occurred on the Sunday after the full moon that occurs on or after the spring equinox. So it is connected to the movement of the stars and planets. And these types of diagrams could sometimes be helpful when determining that date. Also, since the 6th century, theorists had considered the universe as a musical body. The spheres would rotate around each other and create harmonious sounds.
This here looks like it was never connected to a book.
Yes, so this is one of 7 engravings of musical motets that the library has in its collections. Now, a motet is an unaccompanied work for chorus. Here we see Mary depicted in the center with the clouds of heaven opening above her. On either side, we see 2 angels holding a sheet of music, and others are singing and playing from that music. Mary might also be singing.
Is there any significance to the music? Is it connected to a particular work?
Yes, so actually, it is notated in the way it would be in a Renaissance book. On the left side, we see the superius and the tenor voices, while on this side, we see the altus and the bassus voices. So these could actually be combined to create a performable work. Also, the text is biblical. It comes from the Bible, and in it, Mary expresses her humility and praises God. So in this image of the Virgin Mary with angels, we can see that they are singing a song that also comments on the engraving.
Thank you, Rachel, for showing us these awesome materials today.
Yeah, thank you for coming. This has been a lot of fun.
It has been. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Melissa.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great.
I'm great too. I'm excited about talking to you about costume designs. So I've pulled 2 costume design renderings. So these are drawings that were created by costume designers for full-length productions, staged productions, and they're created as a kind of communication tool. So they're looking at communicating to the director what the character wore, communicating to the performers, communicating to the other designers, sort of the color palette that's being used. The costume designer would have done a very close reading of the script to look for character traits, and would also have researched the time period, done a lot of digging to figure out how best to clothe the characters in this production. So we've pulled here this first one that I'll talk to you about. What strikes you about this? What do you notice first?
She looks very elegant.
She does, right?
Yes.
She looks fancy.
Yes.
What time period do you think this is from?
Maybe the 1920s.
Okay, that's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
The way her fur hangs down from off her shoulders.
Okay.
Maybe her hat's very fancy.
Sort of these accents.
Yes, yes.
Okay. What kind of character do you think she is? Is she a main character? Is she a hero? Is she a villain?
She looks like she's a main character.
Yeah, she looks like people pay attention.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Well, we actually know a fair bit about this design. So this was done by Florence Klotz. So she's the costume designer for the Broadway musical Follies by Stephen Sondheim. This opened in 1971, and actually Miss Klotz won the Tony Award for Best Costume Design and the Drama Desk Award for Best Costume Design for this piece. It is set in the 1970s, so it's actually set in the current time that it was performed. But all of these characters are dancers from revue shows from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. So they're meeting, the action of the musical is they're meeting for a reunion. So the fact that you picked up on the earlier time period means that the costume designer is sort of hinting at the nostalgia in the clothes. So yes, it's 1970s, but it's also calling back to this earlier era. So that was good that you picked that up. This character, we have the character name down here. So we know who this is. This is Stella Deems is the character. Now she's not a major character, but she does have a solo, so a show-stopping number where she has to stand out from the rest of the chorus. So that sort of accounts for the pizzazz that she's got going on in her outfit. This comes from the Florence Klotz papers, which we have here at the library. This is just one of several designs that we have from Follies, which is great, and also includes the research that she did. So looking at images and making notes about how she chose these designs for this show. But you picked up on a lot.
Awesome.
Let's try this one now.
Ooh. Wow.
All right, what do you notice about this?
She looks like royalty.
Yeah?
Yes.
With the gown? Mm-hmm. And what kind of character do you think this represents?
She looks angry, mean.
Yeah?
Yeah, her fist balled up, the way her fist is balled up.
Yeah, she's got like a sour expression on her face, right? Right.
Yes.
Well, this is a piece we don't actually know quite as much about. So it comes to us from the Paul F. Steiga collection. Mr. Steiga collected costume designs and set designs, some of which he knew where they came from, some of which he didn't. He sort of took whatever called to him or struck his fancy. But we do have a couple of clues that tell us a little bit more information about this. So we do have this little initial up in the corner here, GP, we think it says. So that could be the designer. And Mr. Steiga also said that there's information on the back in Italian, so it likely could come from an Italian production. We don't know when this show was performed or whoever's wearing this costume, when it would have been featured on stage. But we do know the production name. So it's from an opera, La Cenerentola by Rossini, which was first performed in 1817. So at some point after 1817, between then and roughly now, this was performed. Now the opera is actually a retelling of Cinderella. So instead of a wicked stepmother, there's a wicked stepfather, and there's still two wicked stepsisters. So what do you think, given that information, what do you think this character is?
Oh, definitely the wicked stepsister.
Right?
Yes.
With the face
Very much so.
and the fists.
Yes.
Yeah. So even though we don't have a lot of information about this work and where it's from, there's still a lot that we can tell just by looking at it closely and making those connections.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for showing us these cool designs today, Morgan.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yes. Bye.
Hi.
Hi, Janet.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm just fabulous.
It looks like you have more theatrical designs here.
We do. These are all materials from the Peggy Clark collection. She lived from 1915 to 1996 and was one of the foremost lighting designers in the United States. She was really a pioneer in her field. She also did costume and set design as well, and worked especially closely with the noted set designer Oliver Smith, which is another important theatrical collection we have here at the library.
Wow.
The first production they ever worked on was the 1944 Broadway musical On the Town. And she actually wasn't the lighting designer for that show, but she was both stage manager as well as technical director.
Now, I've heard of a stage manager. What is a technical director?
So she's behind the scenes in charge of all the technical aspects of the theater. So she would enforce safety guidelines, make sure the equipment's running, purchase all the raw materials, and oversee the construction of the set. And she was in charge of this crew of men right here working on the Town. And she would take Oliver Smith's designs and translate them into plans that could actually be constructed. And we have a technical drawing here.
Oh my goodness, why are there dinosaurs?
On the Town told the story of 3 World War II sailors who were on their 24-hour leave in New York City and the shenanigans that ensued. It's where the song, New York, New York, a wonderful town, came from. And one of the sailors goes to the Natural History Museum. And so it would be her job to figure out exactly how big this dinosaur's head is, how it would move down on cue, or how the pteranodon would be secured from the ceiling. And truly unique to the On the Town materials, we have several pastel drawings. They're really informative. They give us another viewpoint, and they show what the production looked like in color. Another production that Clark worked with Smith on is the American Ballet Theater's Fall River Legend from 1948. And it's based on the true story of Lizzie Borden and her murder trial in 1892.
Who is Lizzie Borden?
Well, I grew up right near Fall River, Massachusetts, where this happened. And so I grew up learning the folk rhyme. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. So in real life, she was tried and acquitted for the murder, but it remains an unsolved mystery to this day, though many people do believe that she was, in fact, guilty. And the composer for this ballet, Morton Gould, said, "I can't write acquittal music." So he and the choreographer, Agnes deMille, agreed that Lizzie would be found guilty in the ballet.
What are these?
So these are lighting plans. They're often large documents, larger than the technical drawing here, but the ones that she did for Fall River Legend are nice and small and compact.
Looks like there's a lot of lights and different colors, and these two look different.
Yes, different symbols for the different lights, and the designs themselves are different, the plans themselves. You can see that this one's for the Metropolitan Opera House, and this one is pared down for the road, to be adaptable for whatever theater that they ended up going to. And as part of her process for this ballet, Clark divided it into 15 sections and illustrated each section, and also put cues and important instructions down below.
Cue 9, Revolve to Murder.
Yes, so this is going to be the murder scene. We can see Lizzie with her axe and her parents, her father and stepmother in the living room there.
The two colors are different, the blue and the red. What's the difference?
Yes, well, if I had all 15 drawings out, you could see that for most of the ballet, it is this bluish color of variations on it. But it's only for the last 3 sections where Lizzie Borden is found guilty and hung on the gallows that it turns into this red color.
When you're sitting in an audience, you don't realize how much detail go into the actual work.
Yes. Clark said that lighting is visual music. Good lighting should be unobtrusive. It should be able to communicate what's going on in the production, but it should never call attention to itself.
Awesome.
And I think Libby has more about the actual dance movement.
And I
from Fall of
cannot
the
wait
Legends.
to see it. Thank you so much, Janet, for sharing these materials with us today.
A pleasure.
Hi, Libby.
Hi, Melissa.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for stopping by. I've chosen 5 samples of the ways the dance field has used words or symbols in order to write dance and movement and gesture. First one I have here is Laba notation, which was a system of geometric types of diagrams. This particular page is from Fall River Legend, a ballet by Agnes deMille.
Oh, we just saw some designs from Fall River Legend.
Great, then you know the story. It ends with the exciting mob scene with the gallows, and this is from just building to that point. You have these geometric patterns here and squares for the dancers, which tell them which direction they move, how they turn, and how long it should take them. And over here, there's some explanation of what their pattern on the dance floor or in the stage would be. Okay. And they can see the beginning and the end points.
When would this notation be used?
It's used in a number of contexts. It can be helpful if you are adding a section to a dance or changing it so that you can record that, or if you are teaching a new dancer to learn the dance, it works as well. But the big use currently is that people file for copyright to protect their dance. And then they would be able to charge fees or licenses and have to give permission if the dance is going to be performed again.
So people really copyright their dance moves?
Absolutely, yes indeed. And Benesh is another form of systemized codification of a notation that is used for copyright. This particular section is from a dance called Les Patineurs, which means ice skaters. And this is the Red Girls section. So think about here, do you see the 5 lines that look a little bit like a music staff?
Yes, the staff makes me think music. So this isn't music?
It's not music, but it acts a bit like music. And the way in which, if you think about ballet, you can think about how erect the body usually is, with the head, shoulders, waist, knees, feet, and each one of those body parts then corresponds to the line in the staff, those 5 lines. So if you're taking a look here, what might you think? What part of the body seems to be the most active, do you think?
Well, I see a lot of activity at the bottom. Does it mean it is footwork?
Absolutely. You've got the right idea, because think about ice skaters. The most proficient are going to be doing hops and twirls and leaps. And so for professional ballet dancers, they're going to have a great time with the intricate footwork and leaps that an ice skating type of dance would permit them. But you know, there's one downside here, because these are codified systems and not every person who creates dances knows the system. So a lot of the choreographers have had to make up a new system for themselves. This is for a solo dance of Erick Hawkins, a modern dance choreographer. What he did is he started with the music, and this was a commissioned score from Robert Evett for his dance Stephen Acrobat.
Oh, wow. I've worked with Robert Evett's material. I never knew he wrote music for dance.
He didn't write a lot of it, but he did write some, and this is an important dance. But you can see what Erick Hawkins needed to do. We have language and notes, and cues, and we've got a diagram here and figures as well.
Are those stick figures dancing?
Yes, this is his way of trying to remember what was the pose or of a specific movement. And he used this little shorthand that looks like a stick figure, indeed.
Cool.
But of course, that's great for a solo dance, but it doesn't work so well when he finally had the opportunity to have a company. And so he adapted this system, took those notes and the figures and the diagrams from the music, and created his own separate way in notebooks. But let's take a look at something other than the dance for the stage. How about tap dance here?
Oh, I see you have tap shoes here. So cool. Do the people create dance moves for tap dancing?
Well, I don't know any tap dancers who've created their own notation, but one of the accompanists who played piano for dance classes of Leon Collins, a master tapper from Boston, she did try to create a system, and we have it right here. In this particular one, you can see that she's using the music staff again, but she's doing something different. What
Are
is
those
here?
hands?
Yes, these with the little, what looks almost like a heel, these are the way she does the notes for the tapping, but you're right, she's inserted some hands here, and we don't know exactly whether these were claps or gestures, but there is a glossary that she created for another book, which helps those of us who didn't know Leon Collins or take classes from him, what this probably could mean. So we also have, how about one more example? And this is social dance or ballroom dance or couple dance. You may think of waltzes or tangos or samba, all of those. This book was written by Arthur Murray, who in the time of the 30s to 50s was quite an entrepreneur and established franchise dance studios across the country, coast to coast. But he also wanted to make sure people could buy his book, and whether it was to help their memory or perhaps there wasn't a dance studio nearby. So the book provides some dance notation in it. Here's an example from his explanations of the tango, and you can see that there are explanations and instructions and a path where the feet go, and he makes sure that people know that the man does this part and the woman does this part. At the time, it was presumed the couple was a male-female couple, and it should correspond, so the one would correspond. And just in case you wanted to practice, he also included this inside the cover of his book. And these could be brought out and laid on the floor the same way for this pattern. And depending on what part you were dancing, you could use the men's or the woman's footprints.
So I have two left feet when it comes to dancing. So you're telling me if I purchased this book, I could learn how to tango?
I think you could. The diagrams and the instructions are very clear, and the dances are pretty simple. They're basic. So with a little bit of practice, I think you'd be comfortable to be able to do a tango.
Well, thank you so much, Livy, for showing us this fun and exciting material today.
I'm glad you came.
Hi,
Hey,
Chris.
Melissa. Yeah, come on over.
Hey, is that music for one of those player pianos?
You might think so, Melissa, but what we have here is something far more obscure. This is C note, an alternative form of musical notation developed by the American composer George Antheil in the late 1930s. Antheil believed that the keyboard itself could be used to visually represent the notes on paper. The system uses the clusters of the 2 and 3 black key combinations as focal points on this vertical stave that's aligned with the center of the piano.
Did anyone think it was better than reading music?
Apparently, because you can play right away. Just look at these party goers huddled around that funky looking staff, having the time of their lives pounding out hit songs in C note. It certainly was a novel way of approaching music, and Antheil had no doubt that his system was superior. He went so far as to call standard musical notation old and indifferent because it seemingly had no relation to the physical instruments that made the sounds. Why bother with different symbols for note values when you could just use black lines of different lengths on a simple grid? He patented this system of block notes on a keyboard chain stave as Antheil notations. You have to admire his audacity in these drafts here. Through this new system of musical notation, it now becomes absurdly simple to learn the old system of notation in just 1/10 of the time that such learning would ordinarily take. Sounds like a car salesman. 1/10 the time. Who wouldn't want to do that?
He makes it sound so easy. I guess it didn't turn out that way.
No, and not just for C note, but for Antheil's life as well. He was the ultimate composer-inventor that spent most of his years trying to leverage his musical creativity to create a buzz. Antheil was fascinated with the exploration of modern sound, and in 1924, that meant jazz and heavy machinery and aviation. He wanted audiences to be shocked by the new music of this age that he was pushing. The 1926 concert premiere of his best-known work, Ballet Mécanique, an industrial-sounding piano and percussion piece that made use of airplane propellers, even led to a riot in Paris. It was sort of a down payment on his later nickname, the bad boy of music. He was a brash and at times scheming figure with a propensity for exaggeration. Whatever he chose to do, he always did it loudly. And if you were to sketch out his life, it may very well have looked like this.
Wow, this looks like plans of a madman. What is this?
So these are the scribbles for his 1945 autobiography, which is appropriately titled Bad Boy of Music. I suppose all our lives are probably this crazy, but there has to be a better way of illustrating it. The tracing paper even made a few more appearances in the late 1930s. Check out these life plans he drafted. In addition to pondering how to market C note in the upper right corner here, George is riffing on everything from his mental health and secondhand furniture to a bizarre theory of endocrinology and a devious plot to hide financial assets from the Bank of California, as you can see down here. Truly remarkable stuff, but nothing less than you'd expect from a character like George Antheil.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing this wonderful materials with us today. It was very informative, and I'm sure there's a lot we all can learn from this.
Happy to do so, Melissa.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Melissa.
How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So is this music or more plots and designs?
Believe it or not, except for the photographs, this is all music. And these are really good examples of graphic notation, which gives us a chance to explore the unexpected, which is visual literacy in music. Graphic notation is the representation of music through symbols that don't include traditional notation. It became popular in the 1950s, was influenced by trends in contemporary visual art, such as Cubism, and is most often associated with experimental music, especially works where some aspects are left up to chance. So this is the 1964 composition Elytris by Lukas Foss. He wrote this for 11 to 22 players, and there are some decisions to make before the players get started. Which group do they want to be in? They can be in one of these 4 groups represented by these Greek letters, and they all have to decide, where are we going to start? Now, once they get started, when they encounter a blank rectangle, they look like they're playing, but they don't produce sound. When they get to a dark rectangle, they do produce the sound. Now, there are 288 ways to play this piece. So Foss was exploring controlled chants. He left some aspects up to chance, but he controlled other aspects of the music. He was also exploring this inaudible performance technique that we talked about, and the duality of control versus freedom. So his use of this perhaps bizarre-looking notation allowed him to explore those kinds of techniques, and also it allowed him to create this collaborative performance art where he was working with the players to create each performance. Not quite traditional Western notation as we know it. And then we have this thing.
This looks like some type of illustration of some sort. Like, what is it?
So this is a score map, and it's for a work titled Wilderness Elegant Tilt, composed by Lucia Dlugoszewski in 1981. She was a Polish-American composer, poet, inventor, choreographer, and performer. It appears that when she was conceiving this composition, she envisioned it as colors and lines and squiggles and boxes. So we think maybe the colors could be timbres or dynamics, and the shapes, maybe those are rhythms. We're not really sure. She didn't leave us any sort of key or legend. I'm pretty sure that the boxes represent musical phrases, and they help move the work from beginning to end. But note, some of these boxes are what looks like crossed out, and in talking with some of our colleagues, we couldn't decide if they were also musical gestures of some sort, or did those phrases not survive into the final music? We're not really sure. But thankfully, Wilderness Elegant Tilt did evolve into traditional music notation. And here's a bass trombone part to illustrate that. And if this hadn't been written in traditional music notation, I don't think we would have ever been able to figure out what this map was supposed to sound like. Like I said, she just didn't leave us any keys or cues to figure this out. But it's been really fascinating to study this, to see what was in her mind's eye as she was composing this work.
Yeah.
And then there's this. What do you think?
Oh, wow. This looks like a subway map or maybe a puzzle or something.
You're absolutely right. Well done. As with our other two works, it's also music, but it's an artistic musical puzzle that the musicians play as they work their way through the maze. This is the 1974 composition, The Magic Labyrinth, by Cuban-American composer Aurelio de la Vega. The score is represented pictorially as a labyrinth where the performers choose their own paths to play. So he wrote this colorful maze for any number of instruments and or voices. It can last as long as the players want, and it can be played at any tempo. So the piece is divided into segments. That's these straight lines between the corners. And each segment starts with a clef. It has to be played at least once, and it can be repeated. And so these segments, sometimes they're just rhythms. Other segments are just notes. Some of them are dynamics. And some areas are just suggested improvisation. And the order in which these segments are played, those are left up to the performers. So unlike Foss with his Elytras, this work has endless possible versions, not just 288. And de la Vega is exploring controlled chance as well, but there's just a lot more left up to chance. So in studying all of these pieces, what we've learned is everything is not as it seems. Everything is not as it appears. Music can look like an illustrated map. A diagram can help guide performers through a composition. And a labyrinth can be heard by playing its colorful segments.
Wow. Thank you, Jane, so much for sharing all of these different diagrams of music that may not look like music, but is music.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of visual material in the performing arts. As you can imagine, we've barely scratched the surface of the vast amount of archival material to be explored. For additional information about the collections we did share, check out the Music Division's blog in the Muse.